Hello everyone, today is the 25th of October 2017. I am Caleb.
And I am Anthony.
And we are
The Rivals.
Long-awaited and promised episode on the U.S. not qualifying for the World Cup.
Sad face.
Sad face. I think we had enough time to ruminate on what happened. I mean, it's been, 3 weeks?
3 weeks. There's stages of grief, right?
Yeah, Dabda, yeah. You ever watch that Robot Chicken with the giraffe? I don't usually watch that show, but it's the giraffe is stuck in like a quicksand.
That's how I feel right now.
Yeah. And like first he's crying, he's in denial, like I'm not stuck, and then he's angry because he's stuck, and then he's bargaining. He's like, oh, please God, let me get out of this. And then, in the end, he's so tall that he reaches the bottom of the pit without actually dying.
See, I am so much the giraffe, it's not even funny. But I don't think I reached the bottom of the pit.
Not yet.
Not yet.
So I don't even know where you want to. Do you want to start with the game itself? Do you want to start with everything that? I mean, I talked about the game a little bit in my own little rant, like right after.
Yeah, I think I can give at this point a well-reasoned discussion of it. Immediately after, first off, I think you told all of our listeners that I was sick the week after, going into that week as well too.
Yeah.
So I was physically sick, then also emotionally sick. But I've had time to digress. I've had time to hear everybody's thoughts, see what where the landscape is played out, see where we're going, and I think we can discuss it now without me throwing the computer to the other side of the room.
Your computer, not mine.
All the computers.
All the computers.
All the computers.
Okay, we don't want that.
No.
They're we kind of need them for school.
Yeah. Not that much longer.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we should get into it. So I've broken this down into two different categories.
Okay.
I think the loss against Trinidad cannot be just confined to one game.
No, it can't.
I think we have what I'm classifying as the micro issues and the macro. The closeness of the game, the closeness of just the hex, and then also the problems, the root of the problems that led to those micro issues.
Okay.
So
I think that's fair.
So since you want to talk about the game, we can talk about the game. This goes into my micro category. The first thing, and I'll be the first to say it, when Bruce Arena was hired, I told you it was a good thing. I thought he was brought in and it made sense. It was a logical point, just a stepping stone. We need to qualify for the World Cup. He was hired. We had 0 points from 2 games. Granted, I think 2 of our harder games, Mexico at home, which we lost in, the 89th minute?
Yeah.
Damn you, Rafa Marquez. And then Costa Rica, we lost away.
Which is always difficult for anyone.
I think those, at that point, are probably 2 of the 3 hardest games in the Hex.
And then Mexico home.
And then, I was going to say the reverse.
The other one.
Yeah, the Costa Rica at home, I think, would be the 4th. I think Mexico away would be the first hardest.
Yes. Okay.
Even though we did end up with points.
Yeah.
I could bring that to something else up. So I think the first thing we need to talk about is the coaching decisions, the failure of the coach.
Mind you, I told you I didn't like. I don't know if it was just you and me talking, or if it was during one of these episodes. But I told you I did not like the Bruce Arena hiring. I thought it was a knee-jerk reaction. I guess
we need to take this a step back. Do we think Jurgen Klinsmann needed to be fired?
Yes.
Okay, I agree with you. I think he needed to be fired. Before that, I'm of the idea, unless you go out and win the World Cup, that a coach should never go past the first cycle. I think 4 years is plenty of time. I mean, you can look at all different types of reasons why that is, but I think 4 years you need to, I've done what I've done, I'm going to hand it off, and someone is going to progress us in a new way. I think it's just the intricacies of coaching a 4-year cycle is there's so much that goes into it. There's so much, especially the U.S. soccer, because they, for the longest time, they've focused on development. They've focused on player acquisition, trying to get dual nationals. That there's so much that goes into it other than coaching. I think after 4 years, I think we need term limits per se. And after that, we should move on. I think Jurgen did a good job. I think he was a much better, let's say, technical director. I think he actually had that title. I don't think he was a great coach. I think tactically he wasn't sound. So I do think he needed to be fired. So we agree there.
Yes.
So moving forward, I thought Bruce Arena was the safe hire.
Okay.
And I say that for two reasons. I mean, he's the winningest coach in U.S. soccer history. He's gone through CONCACAF twice now. And I know this kind of goes against what I said earlier about the term limits. But when you're in that scenario where, I mean, qualifying it's a 3-year thing. You get all the way down to the end and you're in the hex. It's the last 100-yard dash.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the end of the race. So you bring. I mean, experimenting with somebody you don't know. I think A, it would have been really hard to find a coach outside at that point. And B, I mean, he really wanted the job. If you listen to all the interviews, he always talked about, I'm going to bring the program back to where it needed to be. I mean, I'm going to instill the passion of what it takes to be a U.S. player. I mean, any national team player, you need to have passion for your team. He said all the right things, and he has the record to show.
Okay.
Hindsight, we're 100% wrong. And I think he was wrong multiple times. I think he was arrogant. I think he trusted players who had no right to be picked. And I think he left off players who probably should have been integrated. At some point, when the players aren't working out for Jurgen and then they're not working out for Bruce, those set of players need to be shuffled. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, if this is a club team, guess what? You're selling people, you're bringing in new people. Same thing. There's other U.S. players. I don't care how young they are. I don't care anything. I just think you can't just revert back to the same thing over and over again. If it doesn't work with a coach, cool. You fire the coach, you move on. It's not working for the second coach. You got to look at your player pool.
I agree.
But that's why I think this is a coaching decision, because I think he kept those same players. He went back to his old and trusted. Omar Gonzalez started the last 2 Hex games over Jeff Cameron.
Yeah.
Jeff Cameron, who starts for a decent Stoke team, who comes off injury and goes right back into the starting lineup for Stoke, who is leaps and bounds absolutely a 100% undisputed player than Omar Gonzalez. How is he starting?
He's not his favorite.
He's not his favorite. That is a coaching problem.
Yeah.
We can go back and look at the last 4 games of the Hex. I don't like to do this, and there are a plethora of reasons why we're not winning those games, why we're tying games we shouldn't tie. But there are key moments that Omar Gonzalez makes mistakes and that cost us the Hex. I mean, that cost us a World Cup bid. Against Honduras, when we, tied, I think 1-1 or 2-2, Omar misreads a through ball in, slides, misses it, and then they're through on goal.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the replay, all he has to do is make the tackle, and he just doesn't make it. In Trinidad, same thing. He should have given up a penalty. One of those should have been a penalty. He slid late. I mean, it's unacceptable. And I think that's a coaching decision. I mean, the player, he can only give what he can give. The coach made the wrong decision.
Right.
So I think, and that goes both on Jurgen and Bruce Arena. I think one of the close problems is that we just made the wrong decisions.
It was hard for a lot of people to watch that game because it was only on BNTV. So I don't know if a lot of people watched it, but so
I mean, I was watching it on my phone. That's the only way I could watch it, was on my phone.
Did you, from what you saw, did you see like a sense of urgency or passion with the players?
See, Caleb, are you looking at my notes? Because that would be my second point on the micro scale.
Let's go back to this first one then. I can't see that far. Okay, so that was coaching. Oh, okay, I see it. Coaching. I have 2 second points. The second point is urgency. Yes, at no point during. I think that goes into the arrogance argument. Taylor Twellman made this argument that we naturally believe that we'll be in the World Cup every time. We haven't been in the World Cup since 1989. Yeah, the 80th, the 80s
88
was the last time.
The 88, we made the 1990, I think is what we made.
Yeah.
It's back at that point. So it's been, I think, 8 World Cups, I want to say, that we've made every single one in consecutive order. We're only one of like 3 or 4 teams that's done that. So at some point it got to the place where, yeah, we'll make the World Cup.
Right.
Bruce Arena said this in his thing. He said, going into the last 2 games of the Hex, they asked him about the Trinidad game, and he said, I haven't thought about it. He said that. They said before, so we played, obviously, Panama.
Yeah.
And then they asked him before the Panama game, what's your plan for Trinidad? I haven't thought about it yet. And everybody just took it off like, oh, he just doesn't want to talk about it. He wants to focus on this game. I really think he didn't think about it. He brought out the same exact lineup, and I think the lineup was wrong. Omar Gonzalez should not have been starting. The modern game is not played with 2 strikers. The modern game is a stacked midfield. We had one center midfielder on the field, Michael Bradley. In both those games. In one, it worked out fantastically. We got the early goal, and that changed the game. In the other one, it was completely wrong. I still think, and I texted you before the Panama game, we won, 4-0 or whatever?
Yeah, I think so.
I texted you and I said I didn't like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And after the 4-0 win, I still said, I don't like it. Go back and check my tweets. I didn't like it.
Because all it did was paper over cracks. Like, the score, I mean.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
The score makes it look like it worked.
When they missed chances. They had clear-cut chances. That game could have been 3-4. Could have been 5-4. It could have been something wide open. Panama just weren't good enough to finish.
Panama were terrible that game, yeah.
And, I mean, if me as a viewer, if I didn't watch the game and I saw 4-0, I'd be like, wow, we dominated. That's great. I watched the game. I know that didn't happen.
Right.
I saw the holes. He should have saw the holes, but no. The arrogance going into Trinidad, we'll do the same thing. Who cares about our holes? Who cares about the problems? We could just outscore them.
Yeah.
But when you get scored on first, it changes the whole dynamic of the game.
And I think there's something they were interviewing some of the Trinidad players or the coach, and they were talking about how they felt slighted at some of the comments the players and the coach had made before the game. They didn't take them seriously, and they came out with a point to prove or something like that.
Yeah, and they actually said, good, we're glad you didn't make it. They were playing, and this goes to your urgency point, they were much, much more urgent.
With nothing to gain.
With nothing to gain other than to knock us out. And they played their B team.
B.
Those were kids out there.
They were kids.
Kids. It's... At no point in the game did I feel like, on our Monday Night League team, when we're down 1-0, I'm bombing forward. Like,
right.
I'm playing left back, and I'm bombing. I'm trying to get up there and score. Just, 2 weeks ago when I played. We were down. We went down in that game to a team we shouldn't have been down to.
Right.
I'm way out of shape because I'm injured, and I'm trying to get that goal. That's a Monday night. Go back and rewatch the game. There is no urgency, and they knew the scores. Everybody on the sideline knew the scores.
Yeah.
Why? Why is that?
I don't know. And I can tell you that after the game, when they were interviewing Bradley, he was just like, yeah, we lost. Like, I expected him to be sobbing or, like, just
Bruce
more
Arena
dejected.
in his post-press conference said, it's a disappointment. It's a disappointment? Really? You're just disappointed? This is what I don't understand. And Alexi Lawless on Twitter has been... I'm going to go off on a tangent for a minute. This is what I've been saving up for 3 weeks. He's going off on Twitter saying, what's the problem? Why is everybody... You're going to tell other people how to spend their own money. Because everybody wants to blow up the system. I tweeted, burn it down.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. We as fans have been invested in this, just this cycle, for 3 years. For 3 years you lead up to this moment. Don't tell me I don't have a stake in the game. I have skin in the game. I wake up at 9 a.m. to watch 18-year-old Weston McKennie play Schalke when I don't care I'm going to bleep myself out about Schalke.
Right.
Because that's an American playing in that league. I watch every game I can. I watch Newcastle to watch Yedlin. I'm invested. Don't tell me you're disappointed, because I was heartbroken.
Right.
And we had our podcast before, and you should go back and listen, where we said, what does this mean if they wouldn't make the World Cup? It means a lot to people everywhere.
Yeah, I agree. I think it means a lot. And when I was thinking about all this stuff, like what I was gonna like say when we had this conversation, I was thinking of what I would be reacting like if it was me, if it was Mexico. And B, this happened to us 4 years ago. Like we were in the same position, and it boggles my mind how he could, like Bruce Arena could say like, okay, well we're like shoo-ins, right? We're gonna make it. When it just did you not just see what happened to Mexico 4 years ago? It could happen to anyone.
And you want to know another thing that he said? He went into it saying, well, we understand we have faults right now with the player selection we have. We understand we have holes, but we'll fix it after we qualify.
You can't do that. The World Cup is after you qualify. You're going to fix it during the World Cup?
He wanted to fix it for the 6 months that you had after qualification to the World Cup.
You have like two
Are you
friendlies.
kidding me? You have to get it right now. If you know there's something wrong, fix it. I mean, Fabian Johnson's not in this team. Fabian Johnson, who at one point was the best U.S. player in this cycle group, I think, before Christian Pulisic came along. I mean, Jeff Cameron is the best defender that we have right now. Why are they not in this team? I mean, why do we only have one central midfielder? I think the arrogance played into it, and they thought, you know what, we'll back into the World Cup. We don't even... If it was me, and I said this all along, you go into that Trinidad game just like you go into that Mexico game at the Azteca. You go 5 at the back. You go two center mids sitting right in front of that defense. We needed a tie.
Yeah.
1 point.
1 point.
No matter what anybody else would have done,
Yep.
would have sent us to the World Cup.
Unless there is one like 12-0.
Which wasn't going to happen.
Which was not going to happen.
I mean, that was the 0% chance, right? That was the 1% chance. Even though we still had a 92% chance going in. I mean, you needed 1 point. You're not starting your best defender. You're playing one central midfielder. You're playing 2 up top. Why? Because you're arrogant. Because you think, I'll get it done with what I have right now. I mean, it wasn't the right call. I thought he was the man for the job. I was wrong. The Aztec game, the game at the Azteca, the U.S. never goes in and tries to win that game. Yes, maybe we try and win that game. But we go in, we don't want to lose, we want a point. We want to draw. That's all you ask for in the Hex. If you win every home game and tie every away game,
you're in.
You're in. Everybody knows this. You go into tie. So even if, yes, we are the better team than Trinidad, I mean, why open yourself up to that? You just needed the tie. Sit back. Antonio Conte sometimes, when he goes up against better teams, he plays 3 center backs, and then he'll stick David Luiz in at center defensive mid.
Yeah.
Try and score on me, I dare you. And it works.
Right.
This is your World Cup on the line. This is the biggest tournament. I mean, I can't tell you what this means for me, that we're missing this. I mean, I can't put it into words. Christian Pulisic is not going to be in the World Cup.
Yep.
Go and get the tie. You made the wrong coaching decision, and you lack that urgency because you thought you can win it. I mean, it's just that simple. And that's the micro. Sunil Gulati said, you know, we can't burn everything down, and this I'm paraphrasing, but we can't make drastic decisions because Clint Dempsey hit the post.
Right, yeah.
He said an inch left, an inch right.
An inch to the left, an inch to the right.
But this problem has been going on. I mean, and I guess now we're going to get into my macro, my big picture, but I mean, it's not just the Trinidad game.
Right.
It's the personnel decisions going into that game, going into the Panama game.
Yeah, because it's...
Going into the Costa Rica game that we lost, going into our first 2 games of the X. All of that added up to not making the World Cup.
Right, you can't blame it on Dempsey's one kick. Because if you had done your job before then that one kick wouldn't have mattered.
Exactly.
Yeah, I thought that was a very stupid comment, and it just showed that he either doesn't think it's a big deal or doesn't appreciate what he just oversaw. You know what I mean? I don't think he understands.
I think it was a man trying to save his job and grasping at straws, and I mean... But I mean, okay, so I guess we'll transition into the macro argument unless you have anything more to
No,
say
like,
about the specific game.
I mean, I was watching the Mexico game, which I already talked about when it happened. And I told you I was hoping we would win or at least tie to say that we saved you, kind of like you saved us.
I mean, you kept saying you really wanted to win that game. You were texting me. I mean, it's hard for me to relive that exact night, so I don't want to go through how we were losing, how Mexico was winning, how Costa Rica was winning, and then in a series of events,
probably 15 minutes.
15 minutes, Mexico goes down. Then, like the 88th minute, Panama goes up against Costa Rica. I mean, I looked up in one moment and I thought, this is actually happening.
Yeah.
We're not going to make the World Cup. And I didn't know what to do at that point. And I'm watching the game and I'm just watching these players with no urgency, no fight. I think they were tired. It was the exact same team who played 3 nights before in Panama. I think they were tired, but that's not an excuse. You fight. Like, if I do it on my Monday Night League team,
right?
And I never want to call out players for like, you know, I don't know, for their effort. I don't, because I mean they're professionals. I mean they obviously have effort, but I mean, at some point, you got to get feisty, you got to get dirty, and you got to do whatever you can.
Oh, I'm thinking like, okay, if this is it, if it's on the line, like I will pull a hamstring to
absolutely.
Yeah, at that point when the sideline's telling you, hey, Honduras is winning, Panama's winning, get a goal. Well, I'm tired. Well then, what are you even doing?
Like there's a gun to my head.
Right, exactly. What are you even doing? I'm
like
tired.
There's a T-Rex following me.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
You throw up on
the
the field. You throw up because you're that exhausted. But that's how much effort they should have put.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you should have seen them falling over
exactly.
with effort. And you didn't. Go back and watch the game. They look shell-shocked.
Yeah.
They didn't know how to react. But we're supposed to beat this team. Great. You weren't beating this team. These 18-year-olds. Maybe we should have had our 18-year-olds on the field. Because I bet you...
They would have put more effort.
I bet you Tyler Adams, our 18-year-old playing for New York Red Bulls, who's the best right back in all of MLS right now, 18 years old. There's no hands down, he's the best right back. Bet you if you would have put that kid on the field, he would have gave everything he had.
Yep, absolutely. It has reminded me because back in the olden Bruce Arena days, I felt like the U.S. always had that attitude of we're not going to lose, and that's another thing that it really boggled my mind to see the players just not have that anymore, because that was like a staple of the U.S. Whenever I used to watch, I was like, oh, they're going to lose. How did they pull off a draw or a win out of nothing?
Okay, so you're taking me to another one of my macro points, and I'll entertain it for a moment. So we're in a transition period right now. For the longest time, the U.S. has not had technical players. So we play against more technically sound teams, Mexico, England, Spain. The thing that gets us through is grit. Is fight and the belief in winning. I mean, you buckle down, you play strong defense, and you see what happens, and you throw out 2 center defensive mids. I don't want to say park the bus, but you fight for everything. I mean, every tackle you go 100% in, every 50-50 ball, you scrap. We're at a transition period where we're playing technical players. Christian Pulisic. Kid's like 5'7", 130 pounds. Yeah. Darlington Nagbe, 5'7", maybe more, 140 pounds. I mean, Yedlin, small. We're playing technical players, and we're trying to play this new style. And I mean, it's just true. I mean, we're trying to play different soccer, right? We always say we need to progress. We need to develop into better players. We're at this transition period where we have, these technically gifted players who want to string passes, and we're starting to lose that grit, that fight. And I think you need certain players in there who are willing to throw, I don't want to say throw punches, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
I mean, willing to go in. If Jermaine Jones was on that field, I bet he would have went for a red card. I mean, he would have been. How many times in this hex did Christian Pulisic get punched in the stomach at the end of a play? Like literally punched or tripped or fouled. Did you ever see a U.S. player run up and say, listen, you're not doing that to my kid?
Right. None. Not once.
Did any of them
Nope.
ever get in the face? They helped him up. We move on. It's just the type of players we have right now. I mean, if I was on the field, Caleb, when people go into hard tackles on you, I run up in their face. I mean, Jeremy on our team, Jeremy Bailey, shouting you out on our podcast. I mean, if he gets fouled, I'm in somebody's face. I'm not looking to fight, but you have to have that grit. I mean, we just, not once, watch the replays of Christian Pulisic. On the ball, makes a pass, Panama player will come up, smack him right in the back, punch him right in the back.
Every time. I was watching that game with you. I told you. They'll do that to him until they take him off the field.
And they had to take him off.
Because he was going to get hurt,
After, the 56th minute or something, they took him off. What USA player was in their face saying, you're not doing that, or going in for a hard tackle? In the game against Trinidad, I mean, Trinidad works there. I'm going to go ahead and copyright that and trademark that. I mean, a red card doesn't go over into the World Cup.
Right.
Someone get a red. Someone go in for a tackle and say, no, you're not going to do this to us tonight. It's not going to happen. I'm not saying break somebody's leg. I'm saying show that you want to be there.
Right.
And I mean, it wasn't there. I mean, and it's because we're at that transition period. We have, and I don't want to say technical players are softer players, but
it's not the same. I agree with you. It's not the same. It's not the same feel.
Kyle Beckerman with his dreadlocks does not know how to pass the ball back and forth between players. But guess what? He knows how to slam into you and keep you out of the penalty area.
Right.
I mean, and what did we do in these past World Cups? We stuck Jermaine Jones, Kyle Beckerman, huge center backs. We're not doing that anymore. And we're not doing that because we're trying to move in this new way. But, I mean, you have to have that grit. You have to have somebody who's going to fight. I mean, I think Dom Dwyer should have been on that roster. I mean, he loves to fight. He loves to get in somebody's face and talk. I wanted to see that. I didn't see anybody talking. I didn't see anything.
And usually, who usually talks a lot? It's Clint Dempsey. I didn't see a lot of talking from him.
I mean, Clint Dempsey came off the bench.
Yeah.
I mean, he came off at halftime, and I get that. But, I mean...
Anyway, let's follow the rubric here. What's our next topic? So we're going from... We talked about the game. We talked about the hex itself. Talk big picture.
So we're going to keep zoning out.
Yeah.
The zoom function. We're just going to scroll it back and see the big picture. We're on Google Earth right now, and we're focusing on one thing, and we're going to move on back. So I'm going to talk about something that I had, brought up to you, I think maybe a month ago, before any of these games. Mm-hmm. And it's this idea of the lost generation.
Right. Which I found very interesting.
I mean, and I don't want to say I came up with this before Brian Shreda posted his article, because but I did. I noticed it because I love following the youth of the U.S. team. I love knowing where the youth players are. I love knowing the youth tournaments. I watch the games. Let me just give you some numbers right now. So this last selection of players, let's put them into 3 different categories. Let's say young players, 19 to 24. Players who we would deem in their prime, 25 to 29. And I think that's fair. And then players on their way out, 30 plus. So 3 categories. I think those numbers work. I think 19 to 24 is good for youth. 25 to 29, you're probably in your prime, maybe on the edge out. And then 30, unless you're Gigi Buffon, you're probably on the way out.
Right.
Germany, 19 to 24, 10 players. 25 to 29, 11 players. 30 plus, 0. Okay, so that seems a little, one-ended, right? They're on one side of the spectrum. Let's pick something a little bit in the middle. Mexico. They're qualified for the World Cup. Germany's qualified for the World Cup. Mexico, 19 to 24, 5 players. So they've got a couple youth there. 25 to 29, players considered in their prime, 12. 30 plus, 6. So they've got majority in their prime. Both of these nations have majority in their prime, and then outliers on the outside. Players coming through, players on their way out. Now let's take the USA. Let's see what side of the spectrum they're on, because I think I see where I'm going with this argument, but let's see if everybody else does. 19 to 24, 5 players.
Same as Mexico.
Same as Mexico. So, okay, that's good. We have young players coming through. 25 to 29, players in their prime on this last roster. 4. Now, Germany had 11. Mexico had 12. The U.S. had 4 players in their prime. 30 plus. Well, we had 5. We had 4. That's not even a starting 11. 30 plus. 14 players past their prime. This is the idea of a lost generation. We had more youth than we did prime. We had triple players past their prime. This is what's hurting us. And, this was coming. We all should have been able to see it. The U.S. has missed Olympic qualifiers for the youth teams. Multiple Olympic qualifiers in the last couple of years. They missed multiple World Cups for youth teams in the last couple of years. The players who should have been coming up from the 25 to 29 range were those players. They were the ones who missed it. It's unfounded. This is the root of the problem. We didn't have a backbone of our team who was in their prime. We had older players on their way out. Those are the guys Bruce trusts. We had the really young players who maybe they're going to come through. Christian Pulisic is he's an outlier. He's the exception, right? He's the player who could be 19 and starting.
Right.
But the other players, they're not. Where is that backbone? Where is the middle? Belgium, 13 in the middle. That's the most of their group. In the prime, 13. Brazil, 11. Once again, the most in their group came from that range. Costa Rica, 15 in that group. England, 9. It's insane to think about that all the other teams who have qualified for the World Cup and who did it easily, it's just a statistic that shows that you need that backbone. You need those players who are in their prime ages, in the prime of their careers, to guide your team.
So I saw this when we actually talked about this before you showed me this little statistic. I think we talked about it in the what happens if. You were bringing this up, but it seems to me that the managers that were coaching the U.S. team relied on this previous golden generation that you guys had, 15 years ago. That's too long ago, but you got all these players that did all these things and they were coming through and they just never left. These are really good players that we've had, maybe some of the best this country's ever had. Let's just keep them on. And therefore, nobody else was developed. Nobody else was given a chance because these guys never were challenged for their starting positions. And you just kept them until they were expired, past their expiration date.
It's absolutely true. Let's take a look. DeMarcus Beasley's on that roster.
Yeah, he's definitely one of those 30 plus. How old is he? 35?
Yeah.
He has no business playing in a World Cup qualifier. No,
Clinton Dempsey up there. Tim Howard. All of our goalies were 30 plus.
Yeah.
Every single goalie. And I'm not saying Tim Howard is the greatest goalkeeper I think personally we've ever had. Some people will make the Brad Fiedel or other arguments.
I think Howard's the best keeper you've ever had.
We have a goalkeeper, 22 years old, starting. Ethan Horvath is starting in Belgium, in the team who's in first place in the Belgium top flight right now with 1 loss. He started for them almost every game this year. Why is he not in the team? You have to start bringing these players up.
It's because he's not Tim Howard. He doesn't have. Yeah, that's why. Because he doesn't have.
But there's holes in this team. Bruce Arena acknowledged it. These players just weren't given the chance. Is the problem?
Right, they weren't.
You need to throw them in the fire and see what happens, or throw them in the water and see if they swim.
Yeah,
maybe that's a better.
Let's
not burn them. Let's just
drown them instead.
Let's see if they can swim and float. let's just look at this. Darlington Nagbe, who is in that prime range, he's in the 24 or 25 to 29 range. I mean, he didn't get his citizenship until 2-3 years ago.
Where's he from?
Liberia.
Okay.
But he grew up here.
Right.
He went to college here and everything like that. But like, I mean,
I didn't know that.
so that's one less player out of what, the 4 that I mentioned. So really 3 that are in the prime who grew up here. I mean, he recently is allowed to play for the team, and he's a great player, and I think he should play for the team. But I'm just so 3 now. We're working on 3.
Who do you happen?
I don't have the 3 off the. I'm gonna go Bobby Wood. I don't have the 3. Let me see if I can.
I mean, kind of just.
Bobby Wood, DeAndre Yedlin, Darlington Nagbe, and there's one more, but I'm missing it. So I mean, it's still the fact remains that there's only 4. I mean, you need this depth. You need this influence of youth, of vigor that you just didn't have with this team.
Yeah, I think they were too old. They were too used to winning, and they just took it for granted.
Those players were though.
Yeah, the
but
older
our 25
ones.
to
That's what
29,
I'm saying. The older ones.
They weren't. They haven't been implemented into this squad. I mean, Germany didn't bring a single player into World Cup qualification who was over 30. Their league is a bunch of youth players.
Yeah, it's a very youthful league.
But you have to give these kids a chance so that they can progress, so that they can develop. I mean, it's unbelievable to me. In the year of 1994, there's only one player who's made a U.S. men's national team game.
That was born in 1994.
That was born in 1994. One player, Jordan Morris. In 1993, one player, DeAndre Yedlin.
That's so.
You have a whole years where you could only find one player who's good enough to play for the team. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Who was it? We were watching. I think I was texting you, or we were watching a game recently, and you told me that this kid played central midfield. He plays in Europe. I was like, why didn't he get a start over Bradley? Who was it?
Weston McKennie plays for Schalke or no?
No, I think we were watching English.
Danny Williams. Danny Williams is one of those players in his prime. Now, we have to be fair. Danny Williams was injured for the last 2 World Cup qualifiers.
What about the previous?
No, he was not injured and he could have played.
Who does he play for?
He plays for Huddersfield.
Huddersfield Town.
And before that, he actually played for Reading, who lost promotion to Huddersfield in the last game.
Yeah.
And then Huddersfield bought him to bring him into the Premier League.
Right.
They rated him enough that they wanted to take him from the Championship and bring him into the Prem.
What is he, 27, 28?
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be in your prime range. And
How old
he's
is Bradley?
30.
Right, it doesn't matter how old he is. My point is, and I think I told you this during the game, I was like, no way a person who plays for Toronto, he plays for Toronto, right?
Yep.
There's no way a person that plays for Toronto FC gets to start over a Premier League player.
So, I mean,
that should be a rule. If you're a manager.
So this, and this takes us down another path, but this is what a lot of people have argued. And Jermaine Jones, I don't know if you're able to see his Instagram post. I'm not the biggest Jermaine Jones fan. I think he's outlandish and crazy. He made some super... Jordan Morris coming out of college, Jurgen Klinsmann called Jermaine Jones. This is Jermaine Jones' story verbatim. He's so truthful. It's unbelievable. It was so candid. Jurgen Klinsmann called Jermaine Jones and said, you need to talk to Jordan. He's coming out of college, and he has offers from teams in Europe, Werder Bremen, things like that, Bundesliga teams, and he doesn't want to go. You need to call him and tell him. Jermaine Jones calls Jordan Morris and says, you got to go. I mean, you have a chance to play in the top flight. You have to earn your position. Go do it. This is the best thing for your career. Jordan Morris said, I want to stay with my family. I feel comfort at Seattle. Chose Seattle over Werder Bremen.
I mean,
these are the problems we face.
Yeah.
And we'll go back to the Michael Bradley thing. Is that, I mean, he was playing for Roma.
Yeah, but he
was in the squad at Roma. Josie Altidore, I mean, struggled in the Prem, yes. Is he good enough to be a championship player? I mean, I think so. Is the championship a step above MLS? I still think so.
I don't see how you can say it's not.
He scored 15 goals on, I think, the Belgian league with...
I thought he played in the Netherlands.
It was the Netherlands. You're right. It was AZ. Yeah, it was AZ.
Yeah.
I mean, they both came back for the money and for the safety of what the MLS brings.
Yeah. And
people say that's wrong.
Well,
Jermaine
it is wrong.
Jones, and this is the point I was getting to, said in Europe, you fight every day for your starting position.
Yeah.
You fight every single day. I bet you Toronto, Michael Bradley is a locked-in starter every single day.
Yep.
I mean, no question. They can't not start him or the fans will go crazy. Even if he wasn't the best player, when you make that kind of money purchase, when you bring in that high caliber U.S. player, they start. Josie Altidore and Michael Bradley are locked in starters. They wake up every day knowing, I get to start today. I don't need a challenge. And this is what Jermaine Jones said. This is his argument. I think it's an amazing argument. Think about if they were still Roma. He would still be fighting for a spot. Maybe he didn't make a spot, but maybe he goes to a different team in the Serie A.
Right. That's something I told you about. These Mexican players that are going to the MLS. I hate it. It pisses me off because we're seeing the same thing. I mean, granted, they're on the brink of being that 30 plus. Like
Carlos Vela.
Carlos Vela's 28.
Still got a year in his prime, but
Gio, he's in the same age group. Jonathan is younger. He should be in Spain. They should all be in Spain. They should have stayed in Spain. It doesn't matter. Like so you're not playing for Barcelona. You're playing for a mid-table Spanish team. That's still better than LA Galaxy. It's unquestionable that a mid-table Spanish team.
There's two arguments here to be made. There's one is how is the MLS ever going to get better if they can't get better players?
Honestly, but my argument is for the national. I don't care.
And that's what I was going to say. The second argument is, I mean, at this point, it's not. So, I mean, especially for the U.S. players, go across seas, get better. I mean, challenge for your spot in the U.S. It's just true. I love the MLS, and I watch it every weekend. I don't have an MLS team, and I still watch it. In fact, I hate the other MLS team, the only MLS team in Florida. But I mean,
we won't mention it by name.
It's just if you have that opportunity, you need to take it. I mean, I would take it.
Of course, you would. And that's why I get angry at these Mexican players that take the easy, comfortable, because they're going to go to LA. All three of them are going to be in LA. They got two in the Galaxy and one in whatever LA.
And they're automatic starters.
They're not only automatic starters, they're megastars. They're not even superstars. They're megastars. In LA, with the Mexican population, they're instant heroes, instant
no
idols.
Matter what they do.
No matter what they do.
They could score no goals, no assists.
Exactly. And they can't get benched because the crowd will go nuts.
Yeah, and they can't get benched for the amount that they paid for Carlos Vela.
No.
I mean, U.S. teams just don't have that opportunity. If you go to Chelsea and you pay $50 million for Batshuayi, he could sit on the bench. Because guess what? You got another $50 million to dish out for somebody else.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't work that way in the MLS.
No.
I mean, I'm not saying every player needs to go. Darlington Nagbe was linked with Celtic. They flew him out to their Champions League game a couple years ago. I think it was 2 seasons ago, maybe one. They flew him out to their Champions League game, had him watch the game in contract negotiations. Now, I don't know if he chose to stay or if Portland didn't choose to sell him, but imagine if he's playing for the best team in that league.
Okay.
He would be playing Champions League games every week.
Yeah. Well, every...
every...
Well, no, and then two Mexicans recently went to Celtic. They're not very good. They were never... One of them, I don't know if you remember him. His name is Carlos Peña. He had the crazy...
I don't, but the
Jerry
Tampa Bay
Curls.
Rays had a Carlos Peña on their team. Yeah, first baseman.
No, well, this guy, he was the dude with the Jerry Curls. I don't know if you remember. He was awful. He was an awful player. But you know what? He got a chance to go, and him and this other guy, I don't even remember his name. They both went to the Scottish League. And you know what? They're doing very well. It's not a great team. It's not a great league. There's one team in that league. But you know what? They're over there, and you're right. They're playing Champions League games. And
so the question is
just
even this lost generation, was it on their coaches? Was it on them for not being good enough to get the positions to try and move overseas? Because think about it. We've always had, let's say, a goalie in the Premier League. Brad Friedel, Tim Howard, Brad Guzan. I mean, there's always a goalie over there. Clint Dempsey. I mean, Landon Donovan, maybe it didn't work out well, but Everton kept going back for him and kept trying. I mean, there's always players over there. What went wrong there? Something obviously went wrong, and someone has to be blamed for that.
But I think there obviously are American soccer players between those ages. They just didn't get picked for the teams, and I don't think it's their fault.
That's what my question is.
Yeah.
Was it just they weren't good enough?
No.
I say no. I say there's no way that in 1994 you only had one player who you thought was good enough.
No, I agree. I think it's definitely the coaches.
There was a systematic problem, and that's why it's the macro. That's why it's the big picture, because there's something wrong there. Let's take a look at the 80s for a moment, just because I want to show you where our team really comes from. 1989, Josie Altidore, Jorge Villafana. 2 starters in that game. 1988, Omar Gonzalez started in that game. 1987, Tim Ream was on the bench. Alejandro Bedoya on the bench. Matt Beasler was a starter. Michael Bradley was a starter. Dax McCarty was on the bench. 1986, Jonathan Spector, Graham Zusi started. Charlie Davies injured, probably would have. 1985, Jeff Cameron, who I thought should have been in that team on that game day. Just because he's at that point still the best player. Someone beat him out. No one has. Sasha Kleshin, Benny Feilhaber. I mean, all these players, were they given opportunities? Yes. And no one, and I don't think it's that the players didn't push them out. I just think the younger players weren't given an opportunity because these were just rated so high. They're the guys who have got us to the last 2 World Cups.
Right.
Let's keep them.
Well, that's exactly what I said earlier. That's what I said earlier.
You've got to be able to groom the next generation.
You rely on these players that have delivered in the past, and you're too scared to get rid of them, even though they're past their prime.
I mean, Kellen Acosta I think he's only 22, so he wouldn't even be in the prime player, so it was probably a bad thing to bring up, but I mean, he played in the Azteca game against Mexico, secured the 2-2 draw. Why wasn't he in this game? I mean, there are more than 1 or 2 players in 1994, 1993 who were good enough to make this squad. I mean, it has to be. There's something systematic wrong, and that's why it needs to change. Something needed to change. And to be honest with you, I think it is slowly changing because if we look at the youth now, I mean, they're good players. But something went wrong there, and so somebody had to be blamed for it. I mean, just firing the head coach is not good enough because he's not the one to blame. He is not the single person alone to blame for a 5-year period of players not getting the chance.
But it's not Galati's fault.
I think why not? He
because
heads the federation.
He's not picking the players.
No, but he's in charge of the people who are picking the players.
Yeah, but you hire a manager. You say pick the best team that you think you. I'm not saying. Look, I'm not defending Galati. I think he needs to go. But
this is where we get into the next macro argument, though.
I'm really not looking at your notes. This is just how the story's progressing. But if I pick you as a manager, and you pick the players that you think are the best, I'm not a coach. I have to trust you that you're picking the players that you think are best.
But you put him in that position.
Well, then I'll fire him if he's not doing the job.
Right, and then if somebody else... So you fired Jurgen Klinsmann, not doing the job. Bruce Arena didn't do the job. The U17 and the U15 coaches who you all hired didn't do the job. At what point is it not the coaches and it's you?
Well...
If a basketball team or a football team, after a while, you fire coaches and you think, you know what, these teams aren't doing well. Why? The GM. You fire the GM and you start over that way. At some point, and Taylor Twellman loves to say this, but the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Was that the best rant you've ever heard, by
Yeah,
the way?
it was great. And honestly, it was so fluent and well thought out.
Yeah.
He had so much anger coursing through. If you would have given me a mic immediately after the game, there would have been a lot more F-bombs and probably some tears. I mean,
I think he had been practicing it just in case because it sounded.
I don't think you could practice that. I think so. And one of the things he mentioned, and this is why we'll go back to Sunil Gulati, is this idea of pay to play.
Right.
This has been the new. I mean, and it's not a new topic, but this is the hot button that everybody likes to talk about right now of why we have this problem.
I don't think that's why, but
So this is why we have micro problems and macro problems.
Okay.
I think all of these come together, and they are all a piece of the problem.
I think it is a piece, but I don't think it's It's not the biggest, and it's not the only.
This is why this is like the fourth or fifth thing I'm talking about. I don't think it... Caleb, I played club soccer. Ask me how much my parents paid for me to play one season for a team.
2000.
You were very close. Just to get on the team was about $1,300. Now this isn't including travel costs, hotels,
Gear.
Yeah. Just $1,300 just for me to... I had to try out first so I would make the team, but then once I did that, I had to... This is every year, $1,300. Next year, $1,300. Next year, $1,300. This is absolutely... How much do football players pay to play on their youth league, recreation, you know? Do you have any idea? Regular football players.
Like American football?
Yeah.
Like Pee-wee football?
Yeah, like Pee-wee.
They might rent their gear out.
Right.
And that's it.
Maybe 50. When I played... Now, and you do have the option of playing rec soccer, not competitive soccer, but I mean, they're two different ball games.
Right.
The players... Why is that? Now, in America, the football players, and I'm talking about the American football players, can get away with that because guess what? They're not competing with the rest of the world. They're just competing against each other. So they're all... I bet if tomorrow Germany started a football league, the competition would then start to even out, right? Why are we always the best in basketball? Because we're the only ones who play basketball except for Lithuania and Spain.
Yeah.
Why are we the best in football? I mean, at some point, you can't do that in soccer. You can't charge $1,500. You lose so many players. And you're competing with the likes of the rest of the world who don't charge their players most of the time.
Right.
Let me tell you a story. At 13, so I switched from recreational soccer, which is basically like $10 or $50, whatever it is to play for the season. It's very lackadaisical. So we have what's called recreational and then club/select soccer is how some people... I don't know if it's the same where you grew up.
Yeah, I think it was called select.
Yeah, normally it's either club, competitive soccer or select soccer versus the recreational. And they're just completely different in prices. I mean, you go from $50 to $1,000, for the minimum team. When I was 12 years old, I switched from rec to club because I just outgrew it. I mean, I don't want to be confident here, but the competitive teams wanted me off the rec squad. I mean, they courted me. A couple different clubs did. Not tooting my own horn, but this is just how it goes. Our goalie, and this is like when we're like 12 years old, was like 6 feet tall, amazing. So good. Highly talented. Like, in that 12, you just knew he was leaps and bounds better than the rest of us. Athletic, big, perfect. At 11, 12 years old, he had a decision to make, and so many kids around the whole country do. And that decision is, do I keep with soccer and go from $50 to $1,000, $1,500, $2,000? Or he was a dual sport. He played baseball. Guess what?
He chose baseball.
He chose baseball.
Yeah.
He was the best player on our team by far. He was the best player at our whole club. He was going to be a great goalie one day. But he chose and it happens to kids all the time. Everybody grows up playing soccer. How many people still play soccer later on in their lives?
Few.
It is a problem. I'm not saying it is the problem, but the pay-to-play structure, and that's not even an academy. At my Clearwater Chargers, that's where I played. I just threw the name out, so I guess now everybody knows. I paid that $1,300. We actually had an academy there who, they practiced daily. We practiced like 2 or 3 times a week. They practiced daily. You had to try out with kids from all around the whole state. Super competitive. They paid like $4,000. And you want to know what kids were on that team? Super rich kids.
Right.
It's true. So we lose these. There are just so many kids who can't play. And I'm not saying we need to target the urban communities. I mean, there's just a point where kids have to make a decision, and most of the time they don't choose the soccer. So in 1994, I bet you if I didn't have to pay $1,500 or my friend didn't have to pay $1,500, he might have chose soccer because he was really damn good. Yeah. And I could remember this. I don't even remember his name, but I remember this so vividly in my head, talking to him one day and him saying, I just can't do it. I'm going to play baseball. And I'm saying, you're so good. And I will remember this for the rest of my life. From when I was 12, 13 years old.
Yeah.
There is a fundamental problem there.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's the reason we missed the World Cup. But I'm saying it is the reason we have systemic problems.
I think it's a big problem. I think it's a really dumb model. Like I think it's a really dumb model. And I agree with you. No other country does something like this. In fact, other places do the opposite. They'll pay you to come play for them, even if you're young. Like you look at Barcelona Academy, they'll pick you up when you're that age.
6 years old. Yeah. They'll pick you up at 6, 8 years old.
And they'll train you. I mean,
for 10 years for free.
And they'll send you to school. You win they're like scholarships because you're good enough to play for them. But they'll train you, they'll feed you, they'll take you to school, and then instead of the opposite. So I think that it's a big part of the problem, and I think it's just like you said, it's part of the entire system. Like, and I was talking to my other friend. While kids in the Southampton Academy are playing soccer year round, that same age group, like mid-teens, they're only playing half of a semester of school because they only play during soccer season, whenever that is. And then you go to college and then you only play
2 months of the year.
2 months of the year.
It's a 2 to 3 month season in college. That's huge. That's a big problem.
Other countries, they don't do that.
We're not playing it enough. I mean, and so what really a big root of the pay-to-play model is that I don't know if you're familiar with solidarity payments.
No.
So youth players around the world, when they get sold to, let's say Neymar, his first contract was with Santos, and his first transfer deal from Santos to Barcelona was for 15 million, 20 million, whatever it was. I'm making up the numbers. A percentage of that would go back to his youth club who developed him. And this happens all around the world. I mean, when a youth club develops a player and they get transferred, they get a percentage of that. Because guess what? That player never paid a dime in his life. And so that's how you get rewarded for developing players. This is a thing that happens.
So these little academies stay afloat.
This is how they stay
instead
afloat.
Instead of charging the players.
Yes. That's the way it can economically work. Because all you have to do is sell one. Neymar sells for 20 million. That club gets 3% of that. That funds players for years, right? And I mean that's an exception, of course. But if you have a couple going to MLS and then getting sold to a new team, I mean I think it's your first. I think it's your first 2 sales. Your first pro contract and then your first sale, I think, is how the solidarity payments go back. Jeff Cameron, when he went to Stoke, where did he go first? He went somewhere before he went to Stoke, I believe, when he first went to the Prem. And he played for Houston, so the MLS owned his rights because that's how it works. Stoke said, okay, so we'll give you the solidarity payments for his youth club. And MLS said no. This came out just recently.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
So in the contract.
Yeah, but why would they say no?
Because we don't have solidarity payments here in this country.
I see.
So it would have went back to his youth, and now MLS gets money,
right?
Because they own him. They technically own his contract. So MLS takes a percentage, Houston takes a percentage, but the club who developed him. And now we have a chicken and egg scenario because he paid money, I'm sure, to pay for that club. So should they not get solidarity payments? Maybe, maybe not, because they've already made their money from him. Mm-hmm. But at some point, it's got to switch to where these kids don't need this. I mean, they don't need to pay, and then the clubs could be self-funded from moving on. There's actually a huge FIFA case going on right now between the club Crossfire, who developed DeAndre Yedlin. Because when DeAndre Yedlin got sold to Tottenham, none of that money went back to them, and they're taking it all the way up to FIFA.
Really?
And that case is actually still pending because they want some money from that. And that's what would keep them afloat. DeAndre Yedlin sold for like $6 million or something.
Yeah.
3%, 5% of that is a chunk of money.
Yeah.
Good chunk of money. I'll take 3%.
Absolutely.
So I mean, it's a problem we're having, and I mean that is one of many problems. Now it's the one that everybody likes to latch on to.
Of course.
But it is a problem.
I completely agree. I think it is a problem. But I think even if you had that system, you could. My biggest one, and I've said this to you a lot, I think this country needs a promotion relegation system.
And
Because
there's the other hot topic that everybody
that one
wants.
is my big one. I think that's even a bigger one because when you have a team, look what happened with a team like Leicester and now Huddersfield Town. That 5 years ago, Huddersfield was on the brink of bankruptcy. They were in the lowest division of England, and now they're in the Premier League. And some of these players that are playing for Huddersfield today, they're going to get recognized, and they're going to go to bigger teams. This is what could happen in this country if these smaller teams get promoted, they get into the big leagues, and all of a sudden, like, hey, where did this kid come from? We've never heard of him before, but he's really good, and now guess what? He's on the scene. And that happens in every league ever. Like freaking Jamie Vardy. Jamie Vardy was considered one of the best strikers in the league. He was like a fisherman at one point. That
and
would
now
never,
he's playing for the England national team.
Yeah.
He gets call-ups.
Exactly. That would never happen here because there's no promotion relegation.
Okay, so I mean that is a really difficult topic to cover because there's just so many problems of why it's almost impossible.
I know. I get that in the American sports culture. I get that.
If I could wave my magic wand today, yes, we'd have pro rel. Also because I support a team who's in the second division and I'd love to see them in the first division. Yeah. But
it would definitely it would create opportunities for players. It would bring players that would never normally get a chance into the spotlight. But I get it. It's not the American way. I mean, I understand.
I mean, and yes, that is a point that we make that it's not American way, but maybe the American way isn't good enough.
I mean, not for soccer. It's good enough for these other sports that you're talking about because
they're not competing.
Because they're not
everybody.
competing. Nobody else cares about American football. I mean, it's actually kind of big in Mexico, but nobody cares about it.
We have
enough.
games at the Azteca.
Yeah, but it's not big enough. And in England, Tottenham Stadium is going to double as an NFL. Whatever. But what I'm saying is nobody else cares to the point.
Yes, to where they're competing against them. I mean, right now we're competing with our hands tied behind our back and maybe our feet tied behind our back. But I mean, it's true. Without these things in place, without this foundation that, I mean, everybody does it for a reason. You always hear the thing is don't try and reinvent the wheel. The wheel's good. I mean, it just goes to this point. There is something systemically wrong, and that's why maybe the person at the top needs to change. And you're saying maybe, well, how does Sunil Gulati fit into this? It's the coach's problem. It's the player's problem. And it is everybody's problem. But if one goes, just firing the head coach is not going to fix the problem.
I agree. I mean, like I said, I think he is partially to blame, and I think he does need to go. I'm not saying that I think he should stay. I think he's out. He's given the USSF a nice chunk of money to work with, and he needs to step down. I don't even know why he's even like, I haven't decided if I'm running for re-election.
Because he's going to run. I mean, if I had to put all my money on it, he is going to run.
He has no shame if he runs. He has no shame.
He has so much power, though. He's on the FIFA Executive Council. Why give that up?
I don't know why.
He finally made it to that position. Why would he give it up now?
Why? I don't even know why he's on the FIFA Executive.
Because he's built up a lot of power, and after everybody else on the Executive Council got thrown in jail by the FBI, I mean, there were a lot of vacancies.
He needs to go.
I mean, supposedly he's one of the people who single-handedly swung the votes in the new FIFA. I can't remember who's the new FIFA president. What's his name? It's blank. I'm losing it right now. But he's actually one of the people who single-handedly swung the votes in his favor. So I mean, he is a powerful figure when it comes to that. And yeah, maybe since once we finally have that power, we shouldn't give it up. But I mean, it's not going right. We saw this coming, and I'll harp back on what we said. But we missed Olympics. We missed Youth World Cups. We've now missed the World Cup. This was coming. We didn't want to believe it. We didn't want to acknowledge it. But it was coming. It should have been, found out earlier. Everybody says, well, we weren't talking about pay to play, and we weren't talking about solidarity payments. We weren't talking about pro rel before we missed the World Cup. We should have been, though.
I mean, some of us were.
Some of us were. But, I mean, for the large part, people were not as angry as they are now. But they should have been. We should have saw this coming. I mean, when you miss Youth World Cup and Youth Olympic back to back to back, there's something wrong.
Yeah. I know we're over an hour, but I do want to talk about one more thing
We can
with
go
you,
into one more thing.
because I wanted to ask you about this, and this is something that one of the Honduran players was talking about. He was talking about how everyone considers CONCACAF the easiest, and I think I ranted on this in the post thing. Everyone talks about how CONCACAF is the easiest. I don't agree. Maybe it is the easiest, but I don't think it's an easy one. Everyone's like, oh, it's even more embarrassing because it's CONCACAF. But what he was saying is the MLS has benefited everyone else more than it's benefited the U.S. players, because obviously the MLS is a better league than the Honduran, Panamanian, Costa Rican, Jamaican leagues. That's, leaps and bounds better. So when these players are getting to play in the MLS, they're upping their game, and then they go back to their home countries, and therefore the national teams are better. What do you think about that? Because he said that maybe a Honduran player may not ever make it to the Prem or to La Liga, but yeah, they'll play in MLS, and yeah, they'll be better for it. And so the national teams in this region are getting better at the expense of American players.
That is 100% true. True. We are bringing up how many Costa Ricans play in our league right now. Almost their whole starting team plays in the MLS. How many Hondurans? Who was scoring against us next? The MLS players.
Yeah. I think the two Trinidadian players, at least one of them, the guy who scored that was a really nice goal.
He's actually the brother of Jovan Jones, who's the left back for Seattle. Not sure where he plays right now. I think he might actually play in second division U.S. soccer, honestly. But Marcos Reina, who scored for Honduras, either Honduras or Panama, plays for the U.S. But let me give you this stat, because the MLS is getting better. In 2017, top 5 goal scorers, none of them were U.S. born in our own league. Not a single one. None of them are eligible. Nikolic, David Villa, Valeri, Joseph Martinez, Ola Kamara. None of them are eligible. The last 3 MVPs, none of them are eligible to play for the U.S. 2016, top 5 players. The 5th highest scorer is Dom Dwyer, who got his citizenship months ago. Not really a U.S. player. He is now, but he wasn't. We'll go to 2015. If you see where I'm heading here, yes, the league, we are absolutely growing CONCACAF, no doubt. Honduras, Panama, their leagues aren't good. Costa Rica has Saprissa, and that's it.
That's it.
And most of Saprissa players honestly got sold to the MLS just recently. So many of their players did. 2015, top 5 players, not a single one of them U.S. born. That's 3 years running. We are absolutely building up all of the other leagues. We are absolutely building up all the other nations. But our players aren't moving. MLS should 100% be a stepping stone.
Yeah. For U.S. players.
For U.S. players.
Yeah. Maybe not for...
And here's the arrogance, and maybe it's not true, but we are the better nation. We should have better players. And maybe that is arrogant. Maybe that premise is wrong. But, correct me if I'm wrong, but the 3 best nations in CONCACAF who should qualify every time are Costa Rica, Mexico, and the U.S. And most of the time, it's the U.S. and Mexico who are fighting it out for the top spot.
Yeah.
And it should be like that. So what went wrong? This is the first time we finished less than 3rd in the last 8 years, and we finished 5th. MLS is growing, and it's getting better, but it's bringing up all the other leagues, which means our players need to step up. We can't be... Now that all of these other nations, the CONCACAF nations, are playing in our league, they're at the same level as us. Our players need to move on. Jordan Morris needs to leave and go abroad. Darlington Nagbe needs to leave and go
At the
abroad.
very
Kellen
least, they should
Acosta
be.
needs to go abroad.
If they're not leaving, they should at least be the best players in MLS.
They should.
At least.
Josie Altidore should be on the list, and he's not. Now, he scored like 12 goals or something, but I mean, Giovinco, his teammates beat him out every single time, and Giovinco's a Serie A player, so that's different, but it's just not good enough, and your friend is absolutely right, that the MLS, as it grows, we're building up these other nations. Because we're giving them a home to develop in. They're getting better. They're closing the gap between us. And we need to be extending it. Our players need to be moving on. They either need to be the best players in our league,
or they should. If they're that good, they should leave.
They should leave.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a lot of information. And I know I gave you a lot there to digest.
We didn't even get to like how to fix it, which I would have loved. I mean, that is another 30 minutes worth of stuff.
Another how to fix it is another hour, and also, yeah, I mean, you got to get my take on who I think should be the next national team coach, right? At some point,
Landon
Donovan.
No, he's gonna be president. He's gonna be.
You know what? I will make a good point is that I think at one point Michael Bradley will be a great U.S. national team coach.
You think so?
I think he'll be a much better coach than he was player.
It seems to be that way. Like, the better player you are, the worse of a manager you are.
Don't tell Zinedine Zidane
I
that.
don't think he's a very good manager.
You just think he has great players?
I think he's very much like Pep Guardiola of like 10 years ago, where he was just like, I have the best team in the world. What can I do to screw it up? It's very hard. I could coach Real Madrid.
I mean, you absolutely. I think there's a chicken and egg, but he hasn't screwed it up.
He hasn't.
So I mean, that's something you got to give him. I think some players though definitely have that coaching mindset that I think Michael Bradley, as much as I give him problems for what he does on the field, I think once he's off the field and he's on the sideline, I think he's going to be a great coach. So that's just my off the wall prediction.
Yeah. Eventually, but I mean, he's still playing.
Yeah,
so.
Not now. I mean, maybe he shouldn't be playing.
I don't think he should. I mean, he can still play MLS, but
see, we're going into the solutions now, and
we
have to save that for another episode.
We do. It's been quite a long conversation.
What do you think, pal? We should do this next week?
Yeah, I think so. I think
the listeners want to hear it.
I think so as well. All right, guys. So this has been another episode of the Rivals Podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Take care.